Small Japanese cell. A boy sits inside. Around him, just 6.5 square meters. A basin, a toilet, a tiny table, and a single bed. This is his whole world. Every morning he wakes at 7 a.m. and lies down again at 9 p.m. Day after day, month after month, year after year, the same routine. But the most terrifying thing is this: he never knows which day will be his last. Any morning, the door could suddenly open. He could be dragged out to the execution platform with no prior warning, no time to prepare. This is Japan's death penalty system, a system the world has called event design, or even a devil's design. While many advanced countries have nearly abolished capital punishment, 2 developed nations still carry out executions on a wide scale: the United States and Japan. At least in the U.S., there is an open public debate about the death penalty. In Japan, however, the process was kept secret for many years. It wasn't until around 2010 that the true, horrific face of Japan's system became widely known. Let me tell you a real story. On a morning in late July, a man named Hirokazu Kato, who had been held at Tokyo Detention Center, knew he had been sentenced to death. 14 years earlier, he had killed 7 people and injured 10 more. In 2000, a court sentenced him to death. Since then, Kato spent every morning in a peculiar terror. He knew he would be executed, but he didn't know when. Prisoners on death row in Japan are not told the date of their execution. One morning, the door might open, the guards would tell them, "It's time." That uncertainty, never knowing whether today will be the last, is a constant, crushing psychological weight. Why does Japan do this? The government's argument is that not telling prisoners the date helps preserve their mental stability. That if prisoners knew the death execution date, some might attempt suicide. Many people, however, call it cruel and inhumane. Supporters of capital punishment argue the opposite. Victims and their families received no warning before they were killed, so killers do not deserve an advanced notice either. Human rights organizations have strongly criticized the practice. Let me share more cases. Take the story of Menda Sakai. He spent 34 years living under that unbearable uncertainty, 34 years of waking every morning thinking, maybe today is my last day. In 1983, it was revealed that Sakai had been innocent. By then, however, he had lost the best part of his life, thousands upon thousands of mornings drowned in fear. Another extreme example is Yuya Kamata, who was released in 2014 after it was discovered that evidence had been fabricated. Kamata had spent 45 years in detention, one of the longest periods anyone has languished on death row anywhere in the world. So, why is Japan's death penalty system so strange? In the U.S., the history of capital punishment is entangled with racism, slavery, and systemic discrimination. Japan lacks that same racial dynamic. Instead, a large portion of the Japanese public supports the death penalty. Polls consistently show broad approval for capital punishment, and yet Japan's homicide rate is far lower than that of the U.S. or many European countries. Even so, the rate at which Japan executes people is roughly comparable to the United States. There are also procedural differences. In the U.S., imposing a death sentence involves a complex, multi-stage process: a trial to determine guilt, often requiring unanimity, then a separate sentencing trial to decide the punishment, again typically requiring consensus. In Japan, however, a simple majority on a judicial panel can be enough. Imagine a 9-member panel where 5 vote guilty, death, and 4 vote not guilty. Even such a close split can still result in a death sentence. That near-majority threshold can make life or death decisions feel alarmingly fragile. Back to that dreadful morning I mentioned. On July 26th, the year noted in the account, Kato noticed more noise than usual outside his door and feared this might be the day. The guards came and led him to a prayer room where a religious advisor offered final words. Kato wrote his will, ate perhaps one last meal, smoked one more cigarette, and was taken to a small execution chamber. If the prisoner is Buddhist, a statue might be placed nearby. If Christian, a cross. The prison warden reads the death warrant aloud. Kato saw a blue curtain that hid the adjoining room. The guards blindfolded him with a white cloth, secured his hands and legs, and escorted him to the execution chamber. Unlike in the U.S., where lethal injection is common, Japan uses hanging. On the floor of the chamber, 2 red squares are painted. The condemned stands on them. Beneath his feet is a trap door. In the adjoining room, 3 officers sit before 3 identical buttons. 2 of the buttons do nothing, 1 triggers the trap door. None of the officers knows which button is the kill switch. Responsibility is thus diffused among them. For this harrowing act, each officer receives only a small sum, about 20,000 yen, which is roughly 150 to 160 USD. A medical officer watches for 5 minutes to confirm death. The body is then cleaned and the family notified. The family can claim the remains, otherwise the state cremates the body. For some notorious prisoners, ashes are kept under government custody. Until around 2007, the names of those executed in Japan were not even released publicly. Everything was secret: when someone was executed, how it happened. No information was provided. Today, however, there are reportedly over 100 prisoners in Japan awaiting execution. Every morning they wake wondering, is today the day? The last person executed whose case was mentioned in the account was Kato, who set a fire and killed 36 innocent people. Some argue that without such harsh punishments, Japan might not have remained as peaceful as it is. Many people, therefore, believe that Japan's approach should be a model for other countries.